Welcome to the Engine 2 Photonics High-Tech Grower channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a deep water culture lettuce growing system just like this one here. Here are the supplies we'll need for the build. First, we'll start with one of these 10-gallon Rubbermaid roughneck tubs. These are perfect. They're just the right height. They can hold 6 gallons of nutrient medium easily, and they're easy to drill and they're very tough. Next, you'll need these rock wool starter plugs. I like the 2-inch versions. You can get these online or at your grow store. Next, we'll need 12 of these 3-inch net cups. I prefer the kind with the smaller holes as opposed to the bigger ones. Next, we'll need an air stone. This air stone's a little small. The bigger air stones are actually a little bit better. Next, we'll need an air pump. I like these whisper pumps you can get on Amazon. Even though we're only going to be dealing with about 6 gallons of nutrient solution, I prefer to use a pump that can handle up to 40 gallons because we want really good aeration. Next, we'll need some kind of nutrient. I like this General Hydroponics Maxi Grow. It's got the perfect mixture for growing lettuce, and it's pH buffered, so you don't have to worry about pHing your solution. Lastly, we need some sort of hydroton or other kind of clay balls. These ones are actually from IKEA, but you can get them at your hydro store as well. So those are all the components that we'll need to build this deep water culture hydroponic system. And now for the tools. It doesn't take very many tools to build one of these things. First thing you'll need is a simple drill. Got this one from Harbor Freight Tools for about 15 bucks. Next thing you'll need is a hole saw kit. Got this one from Harbor Freight, maybe 10 bucks. You can also use an X-Acto knife if you don't have a drill and a hole saw set and you don't want to buy them. However, this will take a lot more time and might not lead to quite as nice of holes. I also like to have some drill bits available. You can get these for a couple bucks at Harbor Freight. But in a pinch, you can actually use the drill bit that comes with the hole saws. And last, and certainly not least, your safety glasses, because you really don't want to get injured trying to make your plants grow. Now you can see that these net cups have been arranged nicely in the way that we'll want them for growing. Next, what she's going to do is trace these net cups. You can see they've been set out in the way that she wants them to be. She's going to trace a hole around the outside of each. Now bear in mind, this hole will be slightly smaller than what she's tracing. So you'll see she's traced all 12 of the net cups. Now she's putting a hole roughly in the center of each of these. So in order to size our hole saw, we're going to line it up with a net cup and make sure that it's not going to be larger than the outside of this rim, such that the rim will still hold it on the outside of the hole. So the way that we assemble this, and one thing I should mention is that if the bit is not already in here, you'll have to use this little set screw, which is inside, and actually the kit from Harbor Freight comes with the perfect Allen wrench to use on this set screw. And I'm actually going to just tighten it up a little bit right now, just to make sure that it's nice and tight and snug. There's actually a little notch on the side of this, on the inside, and you have to make sure that it lines up with that set screw. So you can see that this is it's not a perfect circle, so we have these flat edges. We also have flat edges on here. Line those up so that it's sitting nice and firmly. Take this, line it up also, put the little pins into the holes in the hole saw bit itself. Now take this, put it on, make it fairly tight. You can use an adjustable wrench, but don't reef down on it too hard, because if you do, it'll be really hard to get it off. Next thing we need to do, take our drill, and you can see this is not round. It actually has little flattened edges, and we need to make sure that those line up with teeth on our chuck. Make sure that the grip is really tight. And now we're ready to go. Alright, so we're about to start drilling. First thing we need to do is make sure we put on our safety glasses. Another thing to do is make sure there are no children or pets around. Of course, you're using power tools, so be careful and use general good practices. What we'll do is we'll take this little bit right here, and we'll line this up with the little hole that we've made in the center. Now give it a little bit of force, but you don't need to give it a lot. And just lightly touch the trigger. And give it some torque. Not too much. There you go. So I'm going to do that for every single one of these. Alright, so last hole. And now you can see we got a lot of junk and dust we need to clean up. Of course, we won't want all this stuff inside of our deep water culture. So you'll want to clean these off. You can just use your hands. If you want to get some sandpaper or something and clean those up, you can. It's not really critical. Inside of here, we've got a lot of junk. It's probably best to vacuum that up if you can. And then probably do a little bit of a rinse as well, some water. Don't just rinse this directly down your drain, or you'll clog your drain, of course. Alright, so one more thing we do have to do. We need to drill a single hole for the airline tubing. And that will be what sends the air into the air stone inside. So now that we've drilled our holes and we've got everything ready to go, we need to get some seeds going before we can actually use the net cups with the deep water culture. So we can use this same bin as a great place to start our seeds, and we'll use these rock wool plugs as a place to start them. So even though we only have 12 holes and 12 net cups, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of extra margin of error just in case some of your seeds don't germinate well or something happens to them. So I'm going to break off 15 of these rock wool plugs here. So you can see that they're kind of a little mat here, and you just take them, and it's actually got a very interesting texture to it. Take that and sit it in your container here. Now, what's something that's very important to do with these is to actually mix them or soak them with some MaxiGrow. And the reason for that is because the MaxiGrow contains something called a buffer, and the buffer allows the pH to be held at a constant pH, which is what we want. We want a pH of approximately 5.5 to 6 for this, but rock wool is often very alkaline. So MaxiGrow tells you exactly how much you should add. So 1 to 2 teaspoons per gallon. The container that I have right here is a half a gallon. So I'm going to go on the lower end and do half a teaspoon for this half a gallon. You don't want too much nutrient solution when you're germinating seeds. Some seeds, if given too much nutrient, will not germinate properly. So we're going to do half a teaspoon. You can eyeball this. This doesn't have to be 100% exact. Just do about half here. So you can see I've got that set to about half. This already has water in it. Just going to pour that in. Make sure you close up your MaxiGrow nice and tight, as it is kind of hygroscopic, meaning it'll pick up moisture from the air. Now mix it up. It can take a little mixing because it is a powder. The liquid nutrients can be a little bit easier to mix, but usually, per dollar, the powdered nutrients are better. Now MaxiGrow is a complete nutrient, meaning you don't need to add any minor nutrients. Everything's in there, your NPK, as well as all of your micronutrients, things like magnesium, manganese, calcium, etc. So now you can see it's got kind of a greenish color to it. Now, what you'll do is you'll take this and pour it over these plugs here, and that will allow them to actually soak in. Now, because I already have some plants ready, I'm not going to do this right now, but of course you would be able to do that. Let it soak for a few hours before starting to plant. The seedlings are ready, so now we're going to go ahead and put them in the deep water culture system. Now it's time to mix up our nutrient solution. Simply open the bag and put in enough MaxiGrow for about 5 gallons. Now the instructions say to do between 1 and 2 teaspoons per gallon, or 1 tablespoon per 3 gallons. So we're going to start on the lower end of that, do 1 tablespoon, and then another 2 teaspoons for 5 gallons. I'm just going to use this hose because I have one available. Plastigro can be a little tough to mix up. Sometimes it's best to mix it up in a separate container first, but because we're going to be filling this from the bottom, we should be able to get sufficient mixing to not have a problem. We're going to fill this up to a little bit above the line. Stop. Now let's hook our airline tubing up to the pump. Now let's put our airline through the small hole that we drilled in the lid and connect the air stone. This, of course, will go over here, and we'll attach the air stone. Try to make the length of tubing sufficient so that the air stone will be in about the center. Place the air stone in the water, and close the lid. So now you can place your net cups in here. If the roots haven't started growing down through your rock wool plugs yet, and you don't think that they'll be able to touch the nutrient solution, you may want to raise the water level just slightly so that it barely touches the bottoms of these. You can see now that we've got contact with the bottoms. That'll help the plants to stay moist. Alright, so now let's select a plant. I think this one right here should do just fine. We want to make sure that we're not crushing any roots. It's very hard to get the roots to go through the little holes. The plant will simply do that itself. You can place the plant in. Don't push it all the way down, because as I said, you don't want to crush the roots. And now, place it into the tank. You can continue doing this with all of your plants. So now you're ready to grow. Keep an eye on your rock wool plugs for the next few days. If they feel dry, make sure you add a little bit of water. You can add a weak nutrient solution as well, but just make sure there's no salt buildup occurring. After a few days to maybe a week, the roots should be growing down into the nutrient solution, and at that point you won't have to worry about it so much anymore. Just keep an eye on the depth of the nutrient solution and make sure that it's not getting too shallow. You'll have to change it once every week or 2 weeks. Your light source is an essential part of your grow system. An LED light source with a lot of blue mixed in is often the best for lettuce. Just be careful when you're buying LEDs online. Oftentimes they'll be advertised as maybe a 100-watt LED, but in reality it's only a 50-watt LED, and that's because the seller is considering it to be 100-watt equivalent. However, this doesn't mean it's any more efficient. It just means they're trying to cheat you on the amount of energy it uses and therefore the amount of light it produces. So be really careful when you're buying lights online. Just make sure that you check in the actual specifications and make sure that the power usage is as high as you would like it to be. For a setup like this, I would recommend something around 60 watts of LED power. If you get a dimmable light, that's even better. A little more than a week later, you can see these plants have grown quite well. You'll notice I've added another system, brand new. And I'll show you the roots here. Take a look at that. Those are some happy roots. And that's a healthy, productive, deep water culture system. Happy growing!